I always remember a trip to Australia being massively pivotal for me, where I lost first round of a 32 draw of a 5K, and got 50 Aussie dollars for losing that. But yeah, I remember I quit uni in the January of that year. I coached every evening while training, and I saved up a lot of money to go to Australia, get my flights 8 weeks in Australia, and just kind of, yeah, at the time you think, yeah, I'll go to Australia, pick up a few easy titles, and it'll be all straightforward from there, and it certainly wasn't. So I got chopped in a few first rounds, lost to Josh Masters in 5 then for that one, got no points, but probably went down that month. And that was a turning point for me.
Happy enough to get started?
Yeah, let's do it.
Joel, welcome to the show. Thanks very much for taking the time out to join us and have a chat.
Yeah, no problem. I like the idea. Something a little bit different, hopefully.
Hopefully it goes that way. First things first, Joel. You've been dubbed the fittest man in squash in a few corners. Nice article in Men's Fitness last year. Is that a title you sort of take a bit of pride in?
You get pigeonholed, don't you? I think a little bit in sport. It's not a bad thing to be known for. I mean, it's yeah, I like it. It's something I've spent a lot of time doing. I've always grown up really enjoying, I've loved sport from a young age. You grow up watching World's Strongest Man, bodybuilders, Olympics, you go watching all that kind of stuff. And I think that was always something I wanted to do, was be in great shape, and fitness has always been a big part of my life. So that's something I've really enjoyed since I was a kid.
World's Strongest Man,
Magnus
Magnuson and all those guys.
Yeah, loved it. Yeah, back in the day. So I did enjoy that. And before I had any direction in squash as like a 15, 16-year-old, I think that's what I would have thought I would have been, built more, certainly a lot bigger than I am now, would have been the dream. But yeah, it changes as you get older, doesn't it? And yeah, it's not something I ever tried to do in squash, but I think it was, I sort of wanted to have it as something that was never in question, really. I just always viewed it as, I didn't want to lose matches because of conditioning, and I just took pride in, it being a profession and it being my job. So I always viewed it as like getting great shape and no excuse not to be, going all in matches, and then the squash you could really work away at the squash once you'd hit that ceiling. So yeah, you do get pigeonholed a tiny bit, but yeah, it's the first thing you see. I think when you see someone in good shape and physicality and the pace you play at, people tend to see that straight away, but it's not the only thing. I'm trying to get better at it.
Yeah, when you say about like being pigeonholed, do you find that people almost overlook any other talents that you've got and just think he's fit and he's not got anything else to his game?
Yeah, I mean, it probably would have annoyed me when I was younger. I think as we get older, you view things a little bit differently, and I think your own perception of yourself and how the people you work with see you is really important. So yeah, you start to take a bit less awareness or less criticism from people who don't have a good understanding of it. And I think a lot of people who evolve in the sport would see the way I've tried to evolve, and I'm not the finished article. I never, it's going to take years and years, and it has taken years to get to where I am now. And hopefully I'll keep adding layers to it. But yeah, and keep the physicality there at the same time. It's not that I don't appreciate that, but it'd be nice to have, a few more things and just keep getting better. That's the idea.
Was the physical side something that you always enjoyed, and did it come naturally, the sort of fitness, or is that something that you've really had to like work at to attain?
It's both. It definitely came naturally. I was always quite quick, and I always was good at a lot of different sports. But yeah, I mean, I just enjoyed going to the gym. I was going to the gym every day before I even was playing squash seriously, because it was what I wanted to do. It might have been as how much can you bench press against you and the rest of the guys in the class, but yeah, it would just be as many press ups, as many pull ups, as many whatever it was. How fast can you run a 5K? It was just, I just wanted to be an all round good athlete without any kind of idea of what that would look like as I was getting older. So just been something I've always had naturally and had an inkling towards. But yeah, maybe when I finish squash, I'll do a few mad things. I think like I might close the door on squash and then go on to
got any
well, just challenges would be good fun. I think like me and the guys have done a few. The guys I lived with, we did a few like ultra. We looked at a couple of the ultra runs, and I liked following a few of those athletes just because it's just quite different. So yeah, I think if I finished and my body's in any kind of good shape, which will be quite tough if it is, but if it is, I'll definitely try and do something maybe a bit
something like Badwater,
something like that. Yeah. So it'd be interesting. I'll see what condition my body's in, because if my back, my knees, my hips, and my ankles are not in good shape, I don't know if ultra running is going to be particularly helpful. But you've seen a few guys transitioned into it. Daryl did. He's put out some good times. He's already done 100K. I'm not sure if he's done 100 miles. He may well have already done 100 miles. I don't know. But he's doing some good numbers. He had a great engine, didn't he? So
to even contemplate that type of thing, there needs to be a bit of like masochism.
There's got to be, hasn't there?
Like, do you enjoy the sort of the pain, the feeling of like really physically pushing yourself to the limit?
I think like I always say when guys retire, they always tend to people go in different directions. Some people put on a load of weight and don't want to train ever again. Some people still crave the spotlight, like they get the attention from being that person, and they still want to be, they still want it to be about them, and they want to be the center of it. I think something I've always really enjoyed is that kind of competing aspect, and that kind of pushing yourself part of it has always just appealed to me. So it's not going to be necessarily about playing big matches if you can't do that anymore, but I would just like to do something that would still challenge you, even if it's not as often, then it's not going to be a job anymore. Nice to tap into that, once or twice a year as you get older. Still if you test yourself, see what it's about. It'd be good fun, I think. Yeah.
The Marathon des Sables, something.
Yeah, why not? Yeah.
Jeez.
I think some of the other guys are doing some decent stuff, aren't they? And I think we'll all go into it. I know Miles is already looking at. He's trying to do some high rocks and doing. I think he'll go into a few ultra runs. He's a good runner, so it's going to be hard for me to keep up, I think. But that's the target anyway. Good fun.
Side note there, high rocks, CrossFit. How do you think
Be good fun.
guys like you and Paul would get on in a competition in those?
I think good. I'd like to. It's just there's just no time with the competition schedule. But high rocks I think would be really well suited to squash
Because it's predominantly bodyweight, right?
it's body weight. It's not no heavy lifts, which is CrossFit is quite difficult for because
Technical movement.
if you can't do a handstand walk, you just can't compete in a competition or some. If there's one of those events comes up, you can't do it. And some of them would be snatching 80 kilograms, which is like unless your technique's quite good, you just can't do that kind of thing. Whereas high rocks is just a set of like it's row into run into ski erg into something else, so it's just kind of body weight with a lot of tough conditioning and a lot of running. So I think the squash guys would do very well actually. It'd be interesting to see. I'd like to have a crack at it.
Do you think we could get you and PC lined up?
Why not? Yeah, let's do it. Yeah. I think it'd be funny. What as a pair or going against each other? We'll give it a go. Yeah, I mean, I'll be up for it. Yeah. Maybe when we both finish, if we can still walk, we'll give it a crack. Yeah.
Just take me back to being a kid then, sort of, that enjoyment of watching the fitness guys and stuff. Where does squash come into the picture? You're from Aberdare, I think. I might have butchered that pronunciation, but it's not a squash hotbed. Wales historically hasn't produced loads and loads of male players. Where does squash come into the picture in that sense?
There was a local club. It wasn't high level, but there was like 100 kids playing locally, which was really good. There was 3 guys who I grew up having coaching with, and their kids played within it, and it was just busy, loads of squash players, not at the highest level, and didn't go on to play a lot, but it was just competitive, good fun environment. So I went into that, and it was a mile, half a mile from the house, so we just went down and played. It was just a Saturday morning doing 3/4 and doing drop drive kind of stuff. 4-minute court sprint challenge to finish, and that was sort of the start of it. Really, it wasn't anything particularly clever. And then what age would I have been? 15 maybe, before I started playing like 3 times a week, 4 times a week, and then started taking it a little bit more seriously. So I was doing all sports. We played everything in school, and I went to the gym a lot, and squash was a part of that. And then probably 16 before it was like started taking over, and it was just for whatever reason got drawn to it, and then started doing it more and more.
Was it the physical side that drew you in as a young kid as well, the kind of the conditioning side of it, or?
Yeah, probably. And I think it was one of those, like, it appeals to you. It's the path in squash is really clearly cut out, I would say, which really helped. Like if you're playing number 10 at rugby and there's another guy in the team who plays at a very high level, and you're just going to be on the bench and you can't play. If you lose 4 matches in a row, you're not accountable to why the team lost. You could have had a great day and the team lost. I think with squash it was very easy to go to a tournament. You're ranked 16 in the country, and it's like, right, if I play this tournament, I can make the semis, I can get up, and there's like a clear trajectory as to how to be a good squash player. And the stuff like you can practice on your own. Because there wasn't tons of guys around, at around 15, 16, I had a conversation with Chris Robertson actually. Because at about 15, 16, I was then out of the Welsh national squad, for example. So I wasn't in the top like 8 in Wales as a 16-year-old, 15-year-old. So that shows the kind of level I was at that age. And I asked Chris. My dad said, "Well, if you're unhappy with selection, go and ask Chris." And
because at the time he was
in national coach, of course, yeah. And when you're 15, 16, there's zero accountability there. You're like, it's not fair. They don't like me. They don't, making excuses for it. So my dad pushed me in the right direction. Hard conversation, but said, go and ask him. So he asked me, and he had a few. He wasn't harsh. He was exactly what I needed to hear. But he's like, how much solo practice do you do? Do you actually want to be a good player? What's it going to look like? And he said that he didn't have anyone around him when he grew up in Australia, and he said, if you can do solo practice every day and do, just structure it and do it properly, and I took that on board and just went, right, I'm going to try and do this seriously. And then within 2-3 years, I was getting to quite a good level, just because, right, that was it. I'm just hitting balls every day, and I'm going to get in great shape. And just kind of followed on from there, and I just got more and more into it really.
I mean, you mentioned rugby, right? Growing up in Wales, were you in the valleys? Or
Yeah, that is valleys.
in the Welsh valleys, rugby in
Yeah,
Wales is like a religion.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
You're near enough the perfect build for a 10 or a 13. Like,
They're about
you ever
6'5" in my build, maybe, but
these
as a
days,
kid,
these days. Go back to when you would have been coming up though. They weren't the physical freaks they are now.
Yeah.
Was there ever a route for you maybe going down that team sport side of things?
I think with those things, it's just like a dream every kid has, right? They're going to be, I'm going to play football professionally, I'm going to play rugby professionally. I didn't realistically know that those options would be viable, really, and the same for squash. So that was why I never really considered it as a career. And then when I was about 18, I only then realistically, I was around pro squash players when I moved to Birmingham for university. And then I sort of saw what it looked like and thought, okay, could this be attainable? Could I make enough money from if I was this level and I could do this? Play these league matches. How would this be a viable option for me to live from doing? What level would I need to be? And then I sort of realized it was attainable. And then as soon as I saw that, I was like all into it because I just thought that would be a chance for me to, like I said, as you're a kid, you want to try and be a pro athlete and do something. So that was the big draw for me then. But probably by the time I'd finished playing rugby, I was like 15, 16. So I wasn't, it was never really, I never did it seriously. Yeah. It was just what we did every day at lunchtime in school. And I was decent, but not.
Not setting the world alight. Well, what did you study at uni?
I went to do geography, not because of my passion for anything geography related, but I didn't know what else I wanted to do. I was enjoying my squash and doing well, but again, wasn't realistic. I was going to play pro, right?
Yeah.
I'd done well in it in A levels, and that was it. There was that just shows, right? I had no idea of what I wanted it to be. I just wanted to try and, if I had a chance to go into squash, that was it. So I did 1 year at university, and then I was getting to a level where it was an option. So I took a break for 1 year. You can take a break for a couple of years, but I gave myself a year to see what I could do.
And then delayed your university course for you?
Yeah, exactly. So, and then once I started doing well enough with my squash, I just delayed, and then I was sort of getting up there, and I wasn't going to go back then because I had a chance to do something I was actually passionate about. Yeah.
Because to go back to when you're like 16, 17, I had a brief look at your sort of junior career as a player. And you show up in like British Junior Open under 19s and World Junior Championships, but it's mostly first round, second round defeats to people like Richie Fallows, Deck James, guys that you've gone on to eclipse. So you weren't an obvious talent at a young age. So where does the belief come from when you're 19 and 20 at university to actually be able to give it a crack?
Probably just the curve I was on in terms of development. I was learning, and it was I was still miles behind those guys at that point, but it was more the fact if I had a chance to do something different with my life rather than just go into geography and get a job down that line, because I had zero passion about that. If I had a chance to go down that route, I was willing to give it a go. And same with everything I've done, it's been like in an all-in kind of way. It was, if I was going to do it, it was going to be, I'm going to be the first there. I'm going to be doing solo before the group session starts, and I'm going to do the group session. Then I was going to train all afternoon, and then to pay for it, I didn't want any help from anyone. I was doing them coaching as well. So from 19, I dropped out, and I did coaching probably about 20 hours a week for a couple of years, just to make sure, just to pay my way and to give myself a chance to play pro. So I didn't do much else other than squash for hours and hours a day, just because I wanted to give it a chance. So I was committed to it, and I gave it a good go. Yeah,
hell bent to make it.
Yeah, basically, yeah, and that's what I would encourage with other people. People talk about going to university or not. I mean, for me, it wasn't a risky option because it was like this was the chance for me to really do something I enjoyed, and I'm really passionate about it. If I couldn't do it, I could always go back and finish my degree. That wasn't like a massive concern because it wasn't something I hugely cared about. I hadn't found the direction I wanted to go academically. So for me, it wasn't that difficult. But obviously, if a kid asked me now, I'm a similar level to you at 16, do you think I should go to uni? It would be a hard thing for me to answer realistically, because if they're going to go about it the way I did, then you can do it. But also you might have to sacrifice quite a lot in that period of time of like 3-4 years. Are you actually willing to do it, or do you just kind of like the idea of being a top athlete because everyone kind of does, don't they? So
and at that point in time, because you sort of you seem very much to be your own man and do things your own way. When you're at that point, trying to give it a go, where were you drawing kind of your guidance from, your inspiration from? Was it all just self-motivation?
I was around different coaches. Obviously, I was with Rob at the time, and I had Miles with me, who was, we were doing a ton of training together at that point. and I was getting better quickly. And I think a few of the guys around me were just sort of saying, right, if you're gonna give it a go, let's do it properly. My parents were always massively supportive in terms of what I wanted to do, but it's still a hard conversation, right? Telling your parents, right, I want to quit uni and I want to play squash, even though I've got no evidence that I can win a 5K. It's always hard to go and say, right, this is what I'm going to do. But they were massively supportive, so it didn't. I mean, when people talk about it, it sounds like a big risk, but it wasn't a. It didn't feel like a huge risk at the time. It was giving myself an opportunity to do something. So I had those guys who were sort of, it was my choice, but encouraging me to give it a go. And I had a good environment there where George Parker was around a lot, Nathan Lake was around a lot, Jamie Haycox, those guys. There was a good group of players who were there every single day.
Yeah.
And they could beat me every day, so it was perfect for me where I could just turn up and lose, which I hadn't had before. Play twice a day and keep coming back and getting better and better. So I really loved that environment at the time. Really hard training and had some sort of simple old school guidance, and it was a competitive environment, and I enjoyed that. It was perfect for the time of my life. I just needed that kind of no nonsense, right, this is what it's going to take. Whether it's a solo practice every single day, those kind of things, I just set myself rules that I had to do. And it accumulates quickly, same as anything. If you get into a good habit with things, you can catch up quickly, but it doesn't feel quick when it's you. But I think
No, I
in a
mean,
couple of years, it does go by quick, and you've suddenly accumulated that skill.
when you're in that scenario where you're rocking up every day and you're getting beat left, right, and center, and you've committed to making this path, I mean, that could break a lot of people
Yeah,
quickly.
it can be demoralizing. Yeah, it's tough. Yeah,
There must be not severe, there must be serious.
some scarring from it.
There maybe is some
Yeah.
scar, but there's a lot of mental strength in there as well. So you're not just physical strength.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I always think the discipline of those kind of things gives you mental toughness. I think from those kind of things. I mean, people say, "How do you work on your mental toughness?" People ask those kind of questions a lot, and I think if you've trained, like, the hard training does that for you. If you go in and do a solo practice without headphones in, warm up properly, get there before everyone else, turn up and do an hour solo before the session starts, like, that's mental toughness in there. You sort of, if you do that for 6 months without lying to yourself and without cutting corners, and you eat well, you try your best and actually try your best in these practice matches, be open-minded, listen to criticism from coaches, apply that to your game, like, you start getting pretty mentally resilient because you just adaptable to these situations. Is going to get quite hard, and you go to a tournament and lose, don't be emotional about it. Don't have 4 days off. Don't sulk. Don't eat a load of junk food. Go, this is what it's going to take now. Come back, head's going down. I'm still going to solo tomorrow, whether I want to or not, and just kind of going through that process for a period of time. I always find it fascinating when you see people on glass courts in big occasions and their heads go down and they're sulking and stuff, because if you look at that process for me over that period of time, there's no way I'd turn up and capitulate now, because I've worked so hard to get to that position, and I've earned this now. This is what I wanted. So, it's easy now playing on a glass court in front of a big crowd with a video review, and this is things are great now. So you're playing for good amounts of money. I've done it for free plenty of times. So.
Were you always, even as a kid, did you always have that sort of like single-minded stubbornness streak about you?
Probably, it might not have been helpful. Yeah, it might have been. Yeah, I don't know if that was good in school, but yeah, not too bad. But I've always been quite stubborn and single-minded for sure. And people have pointed that in right directions. But I think that they're always hard traits. They're great in sport, but I think you have to learn how to turn it on and turn it off in your life, and kind of when it's useful and when you need to. Yeah, when that's a good character trait and when that's not a good character trait. This is the same with people who are. As soon as you get higher to the top, people have got a higher attention to detail and a higher standard they set for themselves. So, if you go about that in one aspect, it can creep into your life, and you have to control where the cutoff points are for that. But yeah, because as soon as you're calling yourself out for every single thing, like, that's been not good enough, that's not good enough, you have to make sure you're not getting too critical and too caught up in it, and then still be able to go out onto a glass court and then just enjoy the moment and actually embrace it. If you get too process orientated with that, you can not be in the moment too much. So there's a tipping point with that as well, which I could talk about for an hour. But I mean, that's the stuff that I find interesting in sport, because it can be so processed, but then there's also a degree of like play and embracing like the excitement of the occasion, those kind of things. Because you have to rise to it as well. It can't be all so literal. It has to also be a little bit of, right, this is the big occasion, and now you have to, go for it and
that sounds
have
like
the right feeling for it.
It sounds like something that should be obvious. You say it, big occasion, you turn up for it. But still, when you're playing a 5K in the side court, it's still a big occasion.
It is to you at the time, yeah, because that's all you've experienced, yeah. But I think with those things, it's like Jonah said that, Jonah Barrington, when I was young, he talked about that, and he was sort of and that was something I took and stuck with me, to be fair, where he was saying, you're not always going to be in big occasions, it's not always going to be this, don't get too caught up in performing in front of a big crowd, because that's the easy part. The hard part's the no one's watching on a Tuesday morning on a cold court.
Yeah.
You're stiff, and like you still have to treat that like you're a world number one, like you're a world champion, like you're going to go into it and approach it as if you're going to apply yourself regardless anyway, because you're going to be in plenty of cold courts with a bad floor and a low ceiling, playing league somewhere around you. It's not always going to be great glass court matches. So just going about it every single time when you go on court, trying to adopt that. You've bothered to drive to the club, you've bothered to warm up, you've bothered to do this. Let's just maximize your time, because your evening spent at the club anyway now, so you might as well get as much out of it as you can and just try and do something. That's always what I've tried to do. It's not perfect, but tried.
I get the feeling you're one of those guys that when you get to the end of your career, whenever that'll be, it's going to be a case of looking back and going, no matter where you got to, I've turned over every stone possible. Like that's the mindset you've got.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, people say, how far do you think you can go in this? I mean, I would have been. It's not about being satisfied at any level. I still think I can get better. So I'm always just open-minded to try and get new bits of information and keep trying to, let's see what 4 in the world looks like. That's not the best I can do in my career. I still think there's more there, and I'm still going to keep thinking there's more there until the back, the hips, and the knees are completely packed in, and then I'll go, well, that was it. That was all I had. So I just enjoy that, because it gets boring as well if you go through the motions and just turn up, make another quarterfinals. That doesn't interest me. Just turning up, make your seeding, and go home. Let's try and crack these greats of the game, where you've got these guys at absolutely world class. And it should be enjoyable. I hate it when people shy away from getting exhausted in those kind of matches. You should leave those matches if they've outpositioned you, outthought you, their tactics have been too good, then you should be coming off the court, exhausted, collapsing, because you've done everything you can in that, and that's when you can take pride in, rather than just like, I went for a few shots, I got shot of the month, I hit that, Ali patted me on the back, it was great, but I lost in the last 16 again for the 10th time. I don't have much satisfaction in my career through that. If people do, that's not a criticism, that's just what feels comfortable. But yeah, let's keep trying to do it and see if I can win something of a decent size. But if I got injured tomorrow, it would be, I tried pretty hard, and I'd be happy with what I'd been able to achieve, but I still think I can do more. Yeah.
Just to go back to when you're there getting chopped up in Nathan Lake on a Tuesday morning in Cheltenham or wherever, 21, 22 years of age, was there a moment then where the gamble to go pro clicked? Again, when I kind of look at your career, when you start on the tour, there's a good 3 years or so where there's not many quarters, semis.
It really was.
It is a lot of cold Tuesday night slogs. So
I don't know if I doubted in terms of if I wasn't going to do it, but it might have just been, it's hard to rationalize what this is going to look like at some point. But I always just wanted to accumulate and give it enough time and see by this time, if I'm this level, let's give it a chance. I reference that story a lot, but I always remember a trip to Australia being massively pivotal for me, where I lost first round of a 32 draw of a 5k, and got 50 Aussie dollars for losing that. And that was I just quit university.
Who did you
Josh
play?
Masters beat me in 5. He was playing well that week as well, to be fair. But yeah, I remember I quit uni in the January of that year. I coached every evening while training, and I saved up a lot of money to go to Australia, get my flights, 8 weeks in Australia, and just kind of blew all the money I'd saved to try and do it. Lost quite a few first rounds. I did end up winning one at the end of the trip, which helped. But at the time you think, I'll go to Australia, pick up a few easy titles, and it'll be all straightforward from there. And it certainly wasn't. So I got chopped in a few first rounds. Lost to Josh Masters in 5 then for that one. Got no points, probably went down that month. And that was a turning point for me in terms of like the stuff I just got rid of. I always joke with Jamie Haycox, because we were there together during that trip, and it was like, when I came back from that trip, there were so many things I just never did again. Like doing threes, I'm just like, threes is out. I'm not doing those sessions anymore. Like every single session had to have quality to it, because I can't fly. I can't spend $2,000 on flights and get given $50. This isn't a job, right? So a few of those things were pivotal in terms of lows. I mean, I don't say that in a sad way. It's just like the reality of it being like, this isn't good enough. I want this to be a career.
Again, that could so easily have gone the other way, though. You could so easily have come back from that. I'm just not going to be cut out.
Yeah, I guess the alternative I thought was worse. So being a geography teacher in my mind, that would have been worse in my mind. So I'd give this a go for a few more years. But there's always doubts, but it was never like I'm actually going to stop here. So I got back and just gave myself some rules, and the list became longer of like, right, I need to do this every day. I need to do this, and we're going to watch matches back. And me and Miles spent quite a lot of hours just watching squash and just kind of just trying to be a real student of it, and just learn as much as you can about it. And it's not for everyone. A lot of people would be, yeah, it's not much fun sometimes during those periods. But we actually really enjoyed it. We spent a lot of time doing it, and Miles has gone on to coach now, and he's done great out of the situation. Now trying to apply the stuff he learned coaching to his he learned playing to his coaching now, which I think that's why he's more pros are going towards him. I think he's going to establish himself as a good coach now. And we still do that now. He does that for other people, and now he helps me where we're not training together as much, but he's steering the direction, the stuff we're watching and the stuff we're working on together. So
is Miles a childhood friend, or was he a uni?
we met at uni.
You met at uni?
So, yeah, when we were about 18, and then from then on we just kind of did, right, this is going to be it every day. And he did similar training, and we spent a lot of time training together, and now he's coaching more, but yeah, still applying that same kind of mindset to it. And
Yeah,
he wants to see how far he can get in coaching and how much he can help me. So we're going to get him to come to as many tournaments as we can and see what we can do. Yeah.
I guess it's an important aspect there, right? Of having somebody that's met you in a scenario where you weren't going to be a squash player,
Yeah.
and then has been there on that journey with you for the best part, what, 10 years?
Yeah. 12 years now. Yeah.
How important is a guy like Miles to have in your
Massive.
corner?
Yeah, honestly, massive. Because people actually understand what the transitions look like through every single stage, and someone who's been there the whole time, they know what you're trying to do. So, also think he's got a great understanding of the sport. I always think some people can explain squash to you outside of a court better than they can play it, and I think some people could play a higher level and they could explain to you. I'd like to speak to some of the guys like Gawad or Ibrahim. I'd like to actually understand. Maybe when we finished, we'd have that conversation, but what they actually see tactically and how they view it outside of a squash court, or whether it's just so instinctive when they're on there.
Yeah.
Whereas for me, it was very much like putting pieces together and then applying it. It wasn't that much just like, oh, I just do this because of this. If you ask me about my grip or my wrist or the foot position I come into on a ball, whether it was right or wrong, I would have an answer for why I was doing it. So every single bit I've tried to put together, obviously not perfect, but I just mean you keep adding to that. And I think Miles has got a good eye for it sat off the court. So I think when he's out the back helping me, he's got a very good idea, probably more so than he has playing himself. I think he'd probably say that as well. But it's funny how some people can have a better grasp of it as a coach than a player, and other people couldn't coach even though they've been at extremely high level. Putting that across to somebody else might be really difficult.
You see it in like football all the time, right? Great player doesn't make a great
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Miles did a few years on tour.
Yes, Miles was 100 in the world, yeah.
And were you guys working together when he was on tour as well, or?
We were good mates. We weren't really in the same like ranking bracket, so you're always just watching squash and trying to help each other, but like we're just training together at that point. But obviously then as he finishes, it's easier then because you can actually have like feeding sessions with someone like-minded, rather than just training together. But just keep trying to add to it and keep trying to learn. You need guys, if you're going to have coaches and things, I think them being open-minded and like having a really good like understanding of you is a big difference as well as them being happy to not have fixed ideologies. I always think when people get into fixed, this is the way I see the game, and even if the game's progressing every year, you have to keep watching it, seeing what people are doing well, and kind of evolving with it. You look at the top of the game now, look at the way Mezan plays, look at the way Paul plays, look at the way Diego plays, Frag plays. When people start applying a one-size-fits-all approach to coaching, that's when I sort of find it a little bit more difficult. You have to go, what are the actual non-negotiables that these guys are doing? Like all of those guys I've just mentioned do certain things really well, and they do certain things that they all do differently. So why would you invest a load of time in the things that they all do differently? Because they're obviously not non-negotiables for being at the top of the game. So you always want to copy what they all come onto the ball with options. They all have loads of racket head speed with the swing they've got. They can threaten opposite corners from all positions. They hit great length balls. They hit great shoot. Like study the things that are actually always applicable is what I try to do, and not have like fixed ideologies in the way I look at it. But
I guess if you look at tennis, you've got three of the greatest players of all time, Federer, Nadal, Djokovic, but they're all very different styles, approaches. It's the same thing in squash.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
You've got to take what your fundamentals are and then try and add what you possibly can.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And having somebody like Miles in your corner, and then him being open enough to sort of say, somebody else can come in for a bit. You know, you're working with Johnny Williams, the synergy there between you guys. I imagine that's kind of fundamental as well for you, that your guys aren't just sealed off and one mindset.
Yeah, definitely. I think sometimes when there's advantages and disadvantages to everything. When you're quite single-minded, that can get you to a certain point, and then you can sometimes be blinkered to other information that's like you just need someone to steer that conversation. And then someone like a Johnny, I just approached about 2 or 3 years ago to have a few conversations with, and I said I'd come to Zurich to just to spend a little bit of time with him and see what he thought. And I'd always got on with him for years because I actually played a 5K at his club, like when I was 19 probably. and we'd had a few good conversations there, and I liked his intensity, and I liked his attention to detail. I mean, he's got one of those top level attention to details. You can hear that when he's commentating. There's a bit more. I feel like he always tries to give that analytical side to it. Different commentators have different strengths, and I think that's his. If we could have, I feel like it'd be great if we could have those guys as like an analyst, where you go courtside with Johnny and he's talking about what he's seeing there, and then you've got the other commentary team, and you've got people a bit more spread out into there. That's the analyst, that's the main commentator, that's the someone else. I think that would be a good dynamic to add to it. But yeah, he's added some really good stuff that's helped me and given me a bit of just a different direction. Not that I was lacking direction, but just kind of like made things a bit crisper, I would say. Yeah, just
it sounds like from a timeline perspective, correct me if I'm wrong here,
No,
but you sort of got top 10 around 2020, 2021, and then you sort of were in that 7 to 12 bracket for like probably a good 3. It's only really in the last 6 to 9 months that you've kind of pushed out of top 8. What made the difference to go from 8 to 10 to 8 to 6 and now to 5?
Yeah. I think, yeah, it's definitely helped. I probably, in COVID, I would say was like a before and after part of the career, where I'd almost got to top 10 just before COVID. Probably wasn't enjoying the way I was playing and what I was doing. So that gave me a really good, like, sit back.
What do you mean by the way you were playing?
I just think, I think like we said about embracing moments in your career, and I remember watching a few matches back after I'd had COVID. I wasn't enjoying playing squash at that point, not like in a serious way where you're going to retire, but just kind of sometimes in different periods. I remember looking back and going, that was a great period. You're always going to have periods where, right, things aren't clicking at the moment, but you're just kind of, I'd got my ranking to where I wanted it to be, but I was like purely chasing high ranking, and I was a bit closed-minded in the way I was going about things, and I was trying to change things and it wasn't working. So COVID was probably a really good thing, where I just sat back and go, what do I actually want my game to look like, and it just gave me a chance to move away from it, because without injury you don't actually ever get a chance to sit back from the sport and actually look at it with a fresh pair of eyes. And not being able to compete for that amount of time, it really was a reality check for me that I actually do. I love the opportunity to be able to compete. I really do like going onto big occasions where you feel under pressure and you feel like this is what it's about. Like what are you doing now? Like who are you now in this kind of situation? How will you deal with it? Whereas before I just felt like I was just going through, there's always a bit of that, but it wasn't like, I didn't have a clear idea of that in my mind, basically, and how I was going to try and play. So just a little bit of that, sitting back from it and then going back into it. I felt like I was around the 10 level and I was trying to add things, wasn't sure where I was going with that. And Johnny just added, just tidied it up, I would say. Just gave me like a bit more of an identity of, this is the area of the court you want to dominate. This is what this needs to look like. And just go, this is what your A game is going to be. And let's just base a few things around that. And it just tidied it up again, I would say. And then from 10 to 5 is just, the most boring answer would be just accumulation of time, I would say, where it's just like another 3 years of hitting balls with good information applied, and it just takes that long. You know, some of the guys, unbelievable effort, who come through and they do it by 21. These guys are special talents, and yeah they've worked hard as well, but some of these guys just grasp concepts really quickly and they can go straight past. But it's always been very incremental, and you know, let's see if I can get 4 then 3 and just keep chipping away.
Because the question sort of would always come up, right? What's the difference between 10 and 5 and 5 and 4 and 4 and 3? Because on the face of it, to the average player, you know, everybody can hit shots, everybody's fit, varying skills, you know. Everybody's got tactics, everybody can hit the cross-court next. So you've gone through that. What is that main difference? Is it just accumulation of time, or? For
me, it's been accumulation of time, I would say, because it means you can impose your skill set onto someone and you can get the match on the terms you want it to be played on. It's not always that. I just think that's been the thing that's been lacking. I always try to look at it as, right, your fitness, what is your fitness out of 10 in terms of like, how would you measure your speed? How would you measure your endurance? And you want to get those up to 8s and 9s out of 10s. And then you could go, what is my actual ball control? How would that compare to the rest of the group I'm in? And if that's at 6, let's try and, like, for me, that is a process of time where it's going to take 2 years to get that up to an 8 or 9 to be able to impose the game I want. So I view it like that. I'm sure someone else would view it completely differently, but that's all the way I've always gone about it. And I think people always talk about it being short balls. I view it as quality, because I think the short ball's easy to see. That's the end product, right? People see the ball flying into the front for the winner, but anyone could, you know, I can do that much easier against someone lower ranked because I'm beating them around the back, and then you get easy finishes, right? People see you struggling in the front of the court against the very best guys, but that's because they're beating you at the length. You know, there's so many fundamentals they're doing better. They're reading a little bit better. They're volleying a little bit better. Their astuteness on balls, the positions they're leaving the ball in, the angle they're leaving it on the sidewall. There's so many things before the finished product, and I think the finished product is what feeds from all of those things that come before. So yeah, it's just been really tidying up those skills and just keep going at it. But yeah, I mean, and I enjoy doing that. So that it's helpful if you go through that process and you get something out of it that feels rewarding. Whereas I just think keep on doing what you're doing in like a closed-minded way, and it just becomes a little bit repetitive and dull.
Because you're 30.
I'm 30 now, yeah.
For a traditionally in the British game, you know, you look at Nick, you look at James, 30 to 33 is kind of the peak years. Physicality setting in, maturity in the muscles. Are you excited about the next couple of years and what you can add to your game and where you can get to?
Yeah, I think like I talked to Johnny about this. It was kind of we were saying how there's just no reason you can't keep getting better from here as long as my body is in a good place. I mean, I had injury problems, but I've had a full year now basically where I've been completely injury free, which is great. And just being able to be a bit clever about managing, you just start to understand it better, right? Once you've had enough injuries, you kind of get everyone presents a new problem, but you just kind of work a way of doing it around there.
You've not really had any big absences from the tour in terms of time though, so playing through niggles a lot as well.
You're going to have to play through niggles for sure. There was I had one injury last year where I tried to take 3-4 months off, and then just to be able to keep some ranking, tried to play a few events. It's not perfect, but I think I had to work out how to get back into it. The injury eventually kind of solved itself in a way with a few different treatment problems, and then I was able to really crack on. Those are the frustrating times because you can't impose the game you want to, and then you can look a bit. You can look like you're not playing particularly well, but it can be leading because you're just not getting in good positions with your body. It's really hard to get in good positions still if you're protecting something a little bit. But that's every single pro in every single sport has had to deal with that at some points. You just got to take it on the chin. Kind of find a way around it until the problem's solved. Otherwise, you can't work. So, I came back and tried to tried to play as well as I could with it for a little bit.
Case of injuries isn't an excuse. You got to keep pushing no matter what.
If they're really bad, but the situation with mine is it wasn't worsening the injury. It was something I just had to solve. Like it wasn't like you can't play with a torn hamstring, right? If your hamstring's torn, you have to then rehab that to go to it. When it's some things are like overuse issues or there's something else that isn't going, but you're not worsening it that day by playing on it. Sometimes you're gonna have to. There's going to be a degree of pushing through. I think if you asked Ali the condition of a few things with him, Diego, Asal, Mohammed, anyone who's played for extended periods of top of people have no idea how injured these guys are, like, and the level they're still able to play. What I probably appreciate more is how good those best guys are.
The last few years you've been at getting towards the latter stages in the bigger events more frequently. Is the ability to be around those guys, just absorb as much as you can, information, add whatever you see as possible to your game as well. Is that part of it?
They don't give you a lot of information. I wouldn't say we talk. I'd like to. I mean, it'd be an interesting conversation. I think when everyone finishes, you could probably have a few conversations. Ali'd be someone who'd be really interesting if he would tell you exactly what he was doing and what he was trying to do tactically to you. That's the stuff I find really interesting. But yeah, maybe that'll only happen when you're done. But I think just from being on court with those guys, I've had a few hits with Ali that have made me rethink the way I was going about things, just because his level of the way he does certain things is that good. And then he gives you another problem to solve and just go, right, I'm going to do that. But the same I spent a lot of time with Nick when I was about 60 in the world and he was like top 4. That taught me a ton actually. And same with Mohammed when I was a little bit lower ranked. We trained together a lot, probably when I was coming through, and then we still do a decent amount now. So I've always tried to put myself around those guys and just have conversations with just the guys who do things a little bit differently. Like Nick was a good example of someone who he was always adding, always really conscious, and he kind of thought through every single facet of his game. And a few conversations I'd had with him where not even about squash, just about the way he'd prepared for certain things. Like I'd gone up to play him in a practice match, and when we were warming up on the bike, I can't remember if it was before or after, but he was cooling down afterwards and he was telling me exactly what he'd written down from the last time we had a practice match. Bearing in mind I'm 60 in the world and he's 4 in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And he talked about what I'd done against him in the last practice match and what I was doing differently in this one. And I'm like, well, if he's 4 in the world not necessarily preparing, but just because he's not worried about me as a rival, he's trying to put tactics together to beat me on that particular day, just because he's working it out and he's so consciously doing that. I was like, what am I doing turning up without anything written down, without any tactics to play Nick here? And I'm 60 in the world. It just kind of made me think it's just not enough attention to detail. You're just not studying it enough, and just all those kind of things just give you a bit of a reframe, right? It's not something you haven't thought about, but it's just, okay, he's preparing that diligently. Like, this is what it's going to take, right? Those kind of things just click to you and you go, right, this has to be better now, And you just, I find that enjoyable though. You're almost just like, you're laughing to yourself being like, what if he's doing that for me and I'm not even preparing for it? How ignorant is that to be doing that to you? And yeah, and you just keep learning those lessons over the years, but you have to keep putting yourself around the very best in the sport to learn that, I think.
100%. I mean, and Nick, I imagine, is Nick maybe like a little bit of a blueprint that you look at? Because, like you said, he had that base, but like yourself, a very physical base, and he added and he added and he added, and it was around his 30s where he started winning the big titles.
When I was growing up, he was definitely the guy I liked watching the most. Just the way he volleyed and the way he asserted himself, and he was always very aggressive in his approach. Even if people view it as attritional, I feel like the way he did it was aggressively. Like, you can still hit the ball aggressively to the back and like look to press, and I liked the way he applied tactics. And then he was very helpful to me when I was kind of 20, 21, and he was at the top of the game. So, yeah, he's someone I've always appreciated talking to, and he's one of those guys who's very helpful to. He'll give you as much information as you ask of him. If you ask him enough questions, he'll keep telling you. So, yeah, he was very helpful to give information, and I would try to do that. If someone came to train with me for a little bit, I'd try and offer information in the same way if you can do, because it's very hard working your way up, and you notice these couple of kids who are kind of 20 and they're asking the right questions, or they're not freak talents, but it's like if you keep chipping away and you do these things, like I could see you being a good player. So you always try to do that for other people then when you get the chance.
You're kind of in that position with Jonah Bryant at the minute.
He's pretty good, so maybe not giving them too much, but yeah, there's a few guys who are like that age and kind of around there where, yeah, I'd offer information to those guys if they wanted it. But yeah, he looks like he's on a good trajectory himself anyway. So been on with him quite a good amount. He's a nice kid as well, so he's doing well, and you know, he's one of those different talents. I don't know if he's going to be straight away top 4, you know, like an Asal at 2021, but he's going to be very good very soon. There's no doubt about that. And he seems to be going about it the right way. It's nice to see someone who's got that much ability, but he's actually applying himself properly. It seems like as well. He has a good laugh, but I think he dials in as well. So it's good to see. There's
got the right attitude.
a few guys coming through. Hopefully he'll be coming through as I'm coming out and we'll be done. But yeah, hopefully there's enough of an age gap. But yeah, no, he's accelerating quickly.
I mean, you mentioned attitude a little bit, right? You're also, as well as keeping your kind of circle small, things like social media, you're a fairly recent adopter of, and you're probably one of the only players on tour when it comes to post-match and interview scenarios that's really happy to just speak your mind. Nothing kind of gets brushed aside. If it's an uncomfortable question or conversation, you answer it. Has that always been part of your character as well, to kind of just say it as it is?
It probably would have been, but then there was a period of time where I don't feel like it's that common in squash. I feel like people are very closed off and quite private, and I don't necessarily know why that is, but that's kind of the culture at the top of the sport. People don't want to give anything away. And like I said, COVID, that kind of period out, where at 6 months out, I was watching other sports, like the sports I like to follow. Like I'm watching boxing, I'm watching UFC, I'm watching CrossFit, and I'm like, I really enjoy the content that's, you know, I just watch stuff on YouTube for an hour about their day-to-day lives, and they're going about stuff. If you want to watch them, you know, driving cars for the day, they're going out for a coffee, they're training, you want to watch 2 guys training together, all that content's there. And I feel like we're lacking quite a lot of the content where people are just being normal people, they're being athletes, and people actually have access to it. Obviously we PSA doesn't have that much access to creating that much content. You can't film the guys all the time, but guys in other sports are all being really open, and they're still at the top of the sport. I sort of had a feeling that the guys at the top of the sport, you had to not tell anyone what you were doing and this kind of thing. If people are interested, squash is on a smaller scale, of course, but people still want to know what you eat, what type of training you do, what you like to do in your free time. People are still interested in all those. So I sort of sat back from it and realized that I'd be happy to show people that in my own content. So why wouldn't I show people good training stuff? Like, what would I have liked to have seen from someone in my position when I was 12? If I'd have opened it and seen, oh, this is one of the top 10 guys posting ghosting content, I'd have been like, right, I'm going to do that ghosting session and go take it away. So I just kind of thought, what would I have wanted to see? And yeah, none of my friends are in like big social media people, like, so that wasn't anything I'd ever taken much interest in. I just wasn't bothered. But when I sort of thought, oh, you could just do that, not many people do it in squash, let's just see if people are interested. And yeah, the amount of questions you get about fitness and about different topics, people want to see all these different drills. Like me and Miles put tons of like content together on training drills and stuff, and he's doing it more from a coaching perspective. I'm just sort of showcasing what the top pros do, and if you want to use this session, you can. So I thought, why not? Let's just do a bit more and try and be a bit more open. But it's like we're doing now, right? I think the long form content you see, I'm someone who watches a lot of podcasts rather than, like, I don't watch Netflix series or anything like that, but I would watch long form podcasts. I watch a lot of sport, and I think that's the stuff I find interesting. So I always try to, if there's a chance to do it for in your sport in some capacity, then yeah, why wouldn't we do it? I think it's because there's a lot more to. If you follow certain athletes, it's often you like what they do on court, or you like what the basketball players do, you like their style, but you also want to know the person as well, I think. So that kind of stuff's quite important, because you get a feel for what they're trying to achieve and what they're trying to do, and it's easy to get behind then. Whereas if you just see, oh, this person's really intense and serious when they're playing a squash match and never smiling, never doing anything, and they're just robotic, you're like, it's hard to really get a good feel for that. Yeah. But if people have a grasp for people's personality, like you were talking about James earlier, it's like this. So you had a good conversation with James, you said, and you just kind of, he's his own man, and there's very unique set of reasons why he's playing squash at 41. You know, he's into his acting, he's into loads of different things. He's doing his coaching at Ponte. There's 20 different things than just the way he plays squash. But I think when you get a feel for all those different things that he does, then it almost, you appreciate watching him play more still, because you understand why he's doing what he's doing at 41, rather than saying, oh, why is he still playing? You know, there's a lot more to it than that. So that's when you get interesting characters, and that's what draws me to characters in other sports. So why wouldn't we do a little bit more of that?
Is there any sort of you know, when you're putting up the videos of the 80 kg split lunge or whatever it is there a little bit there in the back of the mind which is going, some of the boys see this, then they might be worrying about me next time I come on court?
Not a great deal, no. But I think it's just good content, and if people want to use it, some of it's pretty hard, and it's good to show that kind of stuff as well. But that's the stuff I enjoy and I would like to see. Doesn't matter if Diego's not a fan of it or not. That's not, you know what I mean? It's like he's doing his own thing. We're all different people. So
how much of that sort of heavy physical stuff are you doing? Because at the end of the day, you have a balance, right? You don't want to put on too much muscle, because then you're going to be heavy around the court. It's going to tax the cardio more. So how much of that sort of actual heavy gym stuff are you putting in? I'm
doing less now. I had a period where I was really enjoying it. That was coming out of COVID. I was doing it quite a lot. I did put on a bit of weight doing that. I think like there's an absolute tipping point where you carry too much. Some people could do, like if you got frag in the gym every day, probably wouldn't put on more than a couple of kilograms because of his body type. Different people can put on muscle.
Are you sort of a natural mesomorph or whatever it's called?
Yeah,
I'd put on muscle easy.
I would find it easier to put on muscle, put on weight. Hopefully when I finish that'll still be the case, because I'd like to be massive when I finish. But if I could do, I enjoy that, so I would do more when I finish. But I think it was, again, same with everything. Same with my swing. I've done too much this way, and then I've had to bring it back this way. I've gone like, how cocked do you want to be, and then how much space do you want, and then you find like you just tinker away until you find a happy medium. And I've done too much running, I've done too little running, I've done too much weights, not enough. You know, I've just gone through all those processes. So I find now I quite enjoy doing explosive stuff, but not massive amounts of volume for it. So, but I've done years and years of it, so I just keep stimulating that adaptation and just kind of still throwing decent weights around, but I'm not really doing anything that silly at the moment, because there's also the knock-on effect of how much time you lose from ridiculously heavy weights. You know, if you're doing really heavy stuff twice a week, there's a knock-on effect of how well you can move for the practice matches and stuff like that. So it's constantly trying to balance it, but everyone's body type is different. I'm sure Ali does far less than me, even though I'm saying it's not very much. He's probably doing way less, and different people need to do different amounts. I mean, George, I spent a lot of time with George Parker, and he's on unbelievable gym numbers he's been able to put out over the years, and kind of, you could have a conversation with him about those kind of things, because he's actually very knowledgeable on those aspects. But he would say he's been someone who's got too obsessed with that, just putting really good numbers out of the gym and getting that perfect, and then ignoring his squash, and then getting too into his squash and ignoring the weights. It's just that you're always trying to find that tipping point with it. And certain people's bodies, like him, genetically, he can take a huge amount. Like he's one of the best athletes in terms of raw athletes. He's really unusual. Like physically what he can do, and he's an animal. People don't realize it, but I mean, they probably do, to be fair, if they've seen anything. But
he's one of those guys you look at, you forget about on the squash court. He's one of those guys you look at and you just go, he's an athlete. I don't know what sport he's in, but he's an athlete.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so he can put out some good numbers, but for him, it's probably like, how much time do you actually ever need to spend doing that? If he just taps into it a little bit, he's got like a genetic like talent there, let's say. So how much time do you really need to spend on it? You just need to make sure you're getting that adaptation, and then spend the rest of the time on court. So that's something that he's spent time working out, and everyone's body type is different, right? Ali's got that really natural tendony, like fast twitch, big split step, and that like explosive movement from the middle, and he makes his movement around that. You've got Asal, who can do those big explosive positions in the front corner. Like what I think is, you should specialize in terms of what your body type allows, and you find the best game that fits for you. I think when people try to copy other people's training too much, it's like it doesn't suit their body type and their style and the way they're trying to play. So that's something you've got to be conscious of as well. But I've enjoyed getting it wrong, and I've enjoyed getting, you know what I mean? I really got into it and I enjoyed it, and I've probably gone too far, and then you just bring it back. But that's all like we talked about from 18. It's like you just get it wrong, right? You're right, as long as you're writing it down and don't keep making the same mistake. It's like it's gone too far, you bring it back, and
You mentioned boxing there as well, something you're watching a lot of. Also something we see you doing a bit on social, clips up there, you working on the mitts and on the bag. And how much of that are you kind of doing on a weekly basis, or where does the boxing come into things?
It comes into it in no way at all towards my squash training. I mean, I see people going, "Oh, is this what you do? This for footwork, or you do this for?" I'm like, it couldn't be less related to squash. I just, like the guys play golf. People like doing certain things. I don't like playing golf. I don't like playing on Xbox. I don't do any of those kind of things. I guess it's just a hobby away from squash for me. But it's something I've always wanted to do, and I'll do more for sure when I finish. Once I've got more time. I'm aware that it's not massively helpful to box 7 days a week on top of doing 2 sessions a day of squash. So I don't do that. I do probably 3 a week when I'm at home. But I normally do my squash sessions, finish, and then I'll go to the gym tired and just kind of do whatever I can at that point. I'm certainly not fitting my squash around that at this point, but I enjoy it. I get a lot out of it. It's something I enjoy, and it's a different kind of competing. I think it probably, with no intention of it doing so, has helped me compete in squash, because I think like just the way you think about things and the level of like what the level of competing and difficult situations actually are, like hard sparring, just some of those kind of things just give you a bit of a reality check in a way that like I found good fun, and ask you a few questions yourself. So like I said about the ultra running or doing these kind of things, there's always those things that make you go like actually make you nervous, or make you think, right, this is going to be really hard, or just like ask you a few questions. That's always the stuff I find enjoyable, and I'll also just like boxing. I like watching it, and I like
have you got in actually in the ring and had, you said sparring? Most of what you put on social is mitts and bag work, but you're in the ring sparring as well.
But to clip your highlights of the sparring, really, do you know what I mean? I've done a decent amount. Most weeks we do some form of like light sparring and like partner drills, that kind of thing. It's just like playing, but you're obviously not playing squash all the time in the same way that you train a good amount for it, and then you do it. You obviously can't hard spar all the time, and I'm obviously aware you can't get punched in the head too many times before a big match. But a lot of the time that the rules in the gym, people are pretty sound about it, and they're like, if you're working together, you're not just trying to like absolutely crack each other in hard sparring. So we've done a few like club ones where you get a few from our club, go across and have like an inter-club kind of thing, do that kind of thing, and you get you get matched up.
Competed in it?
Yeah, we do, but just because of tournaments, I don't have like a load of time. So like there's 10 a year you can go to. I mean, most of them have tournaments on, so if one fits in where we've got a little gap, we try and do it. Yeah, but it's often easier just to try and get matched up with someone at a local gym who's like a similar weight to you, and you can just go and do like competitive sparring there, which is good fun. But I enjoy it. I mean, you're not trying to do anything at a particularly high level, but I'm always trying to get better at it, and I enjoy the competing side of it. It's hard. It's really it. And
what's your record at the minute?
You don't have a record doing these kind of things. Like, no, if you're just doing like sparring or club stuff, you don't have a record. You'd have to be in the amateurs and actually be doing it like, at England Squash Juniors, playing all the tournaments and going around. Yeah. You'd have that kind of thing if you wanted to do it. So yeah, we're just doing hard sparring, club sparring.
Would you ever consider, maybe
I'm going to be too old, I think, by the end of it, unfortunately.
You see the journeyman boxers are...
Yeah, you could do, yeah. I mean, I'd like to do a couple of proper ones afterwards, but it's more about getting better and getting good competition in, rather than just doing it for the sake of it. But yeah, I might do a couple. It'd be good fun afterwards. To be fair, I'd do it now. If the timing worked out and there was a show we could do, I would definitely do it now. But we finished the season in like July basically in squash, and then we're gonna be starting back up middle of August. There's about 4 weeks there in the middle, but I just enjoy it. I get a lot out of it, so I'll keep.
Are you connected to any pro boxers or anything? Like, do you know any guys on the boxing circuit?
To do what with? To do
just friends, that people you sort of know at all.
Most of the guys are it's just club standard at the ones I'm in at the moment. There's a couple of guys who are in one of the gyms I went to. There was a couple of guys there, but
I was going to ask if you knew any guys that were pros, and if you sort of like
do a day crossover or something.
Not so much crossover, but if you ever like just sort of spitballed with them to share ideas and just get an insight into that side of things.
My main sponsor, Chris Greenway, who's my car sponsor, so he gets me a car every year. He also sponsored Joe Cordina, who is a Welsh. He's been 2-time world champion. So I spoke to him when he was over with Chris's as well, but no, we haven't done anything. We're gonna try and set up a day where you go and I do a bit of sparring with him, and then he comes and plays for us. Didn't end up fitting in because he's busy. So, but yeah, that would have been quite funny as well if we could have fitted that in. But
I guess like sort of just your sort of approach to the whole thing, being able to pick somebody else's brain that's at the top of their sport, just to see if there's anything else any other stones to turn over? Like I imagine that's the kind of thing you'd
Yeah, that would be the kind of thing I'd enjoy. Yeah. I get a lot out of it from, I think the long form podcasts you see a lot of people do in different sports. I enjoy listening to a lot of those. Because you just get such a different, there's so much crossover with the way people approach different things. It doesn't necessarily have to be about your backhand wrist position being the bit that you have to change. It's more just their absolute approach to training. And some of the guys from Jujitsu, I've listened to a few of those who like, I don't do any Jujitsu, but I just like, it's a sport I find interesting because it's very much like um, it's so physical, so intense. And plus you've got like the chess aspect to it, which there's some crossover with squash, but it's more just the way they think and the strategy and the way they go about it. Some of the guys there, I've listened to like 10 podcasts from one guy who was one of the coaches, and there's been loads that have applied to squash massively about the way he gets his best athletes to train. And look,
sort of the mindset sort of thing that you're taking from it.
yeah, but I think like, yeah, I mean, one I talked about before, just talking about he talks about the way, the illusion of competition. He's like, when it says, so with that, without like absolutely ripping off what he said already, I was giving an example of one that I've felt applied to squash would be, he talks about it being like people get so nervous and get caught up on the big stage and how like this is the moment and this is like, as soon as the crowd's there and the commentary's there and the interviews and the photos and everything, it's like, this is the same thing. Like the size of the squash court doesn't change, the floor doesn't change. It's like this is the exact same thing you do every single day. So it's not like why would all the external stuff is just noise? And how he's talking about that is so relevant to squash because he's talking about how the competition they go into, they go out of their way to try and like you have fire as you're walking in, you have the intro tunes, they make it this big thing, but actually all you're doing is rolling. They're just competing the same way that they do twice a day in the gym. And I think like things like that he talks about, it's just a complete illusion to be going into a match situation, be doing anything. Like if you train properly and train hard, like you can be doing exactly the same thing, and there's none of those externals have any influence on the way I hit a backhand. It's like just because we're talking about me hitting a backhand and him getting a guillotine, it's no different between the concept is that I practice mine all the time, he practices his, and how you're able to execute it under pressure is that the pressure shouldn't really make any difference, unless you're using it positively in the sense that like you're more heightened, you're more aware, you're more reactive, but it shouldn't ever detract from the performance. And that's just one example of it that I'm like, that really does apply to, there's so much crossover in that.
Is that that side of, you talked about the flames and stuff, and I know you kind of like the boxing and the way they get their personalities across. Is that sort of stuff, like, can that come into squash more of that showbiz, spectacle, darts, walk-on music, lights go down, lying? Like, would you like to see that kind of stuff come into the game a bit?
I mean, we've talked about that before, where you get that. Squash is different, isn't it? I think like it's always going to be a bit more on the side of tennis, golf, because of the culture it's been brought up in. But I think the way that cricket with 2020, darts have been able to do it, like they've completely revamped their sports and made them so appealing to a big audience. I think we definitely need to make more effort to make the top athletes look like, to make a bit more of a spectacle of these things and have like again just more interviews, more content. I watch a lot of, so say if you're into UFC and there's a UFC fight coming up on Saturday, every day throughout the UFC build up to fight week, there's like they put a 10-minute series out every single night of the week building up to it, where they followed round the athletes that are going to be competing on the Saturday. So they might be the day they're flying, the weight cut, their last training session, their last hard physical session, and they film it all as they're going through it. I feel like if we could find a way of getting like before Worlds, you've got like the top 8 guys, you've got like managed to film content before they go together, and you could like release that in the build up to the Worlds, just to try and get a bit more of an occasion out of it. Otherwise there's so many matches that just go unnoticed. Like let's actually try and create some build up for big events. Again, I know it's really expensive and the content's hard for squash to send 8 photographers around. Maybe you do it with 4, maybe you do it with a couple, but just the more of these insights into the guys, it's just interesting, isn't it? I think
we're in some pretty cool venues, but do you feel like there could be more done to make the in-venue experience a bit more as well? You add those walk-on theme tunes.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
I don't know what Golden Tiger would be in terms of music, but having that kind of personalized side to it, is that something you'd like?
Well, we should all probably have walkout songs that are associated to the athletes. Like I think like when you see them walking out, a certain song's attached to a certain boxer, and it kind of like creates that feeling of I've watched him walk out before. This is the moment he's getting ready to compete. So you kind of get a feeling from that you're selling so much more than just them boxing, because a lot of people don't even understand And I mean, I follow a lot of it, and like a squash fan watching the squash, there's so many intricacies that you don't understand even if you do it regularly.
Yeah, sure.
Let alone the people who just have no understanding of it. They're just watching two people hit each other. They're going there because of the entertainment around it. So I think we have to make sure it's like the music is big. I think like the intros, walkouts have to be really big, and they have to kind of sell it, the drama of it a bit more, and try and create it. I think sometimes like the interaction with the referee sometimes detract from that now, with the way referees are closing down any conversation. There needs to be less conversation, of course, but like I think the dialogue between players and referees can sometimes seem a bit amateurish. So I think like some of that detracts from it a little bit. But yeah, the walkouts and just a bit more hype around it, a bit more content, and a bit more players being allowed to say and do a little bit more. Not that they're not allowed to, but
I think it's
just being encouraged. Everyone's allowed to, of course. I just mean it being the norm a little bit more. Just realizing that we're an entertainment product at the end of the day, and just trying to make it a bit more relevant.
And do you think, you say the players kind of, feeling confident enough, I guess, to show off themselves? Is that, you sort of touched on it earlier, but do you think that is a case of, I don't want to give away too much in case he can read in something into that? Is that, you think
You'd have to ask all the different individuals. I think if people started doing it more, I think like social media has been a big one. Once a few people started posting a bit more training content, there's tons more now than there was 5 years ago, I think. Would you agree? Do you think that there's like
100%.
You can go and view, look, people are doing more day in the life content, even if it's just on reels. Doesn't even have to be long form. Like there is a lot more squash content out there, and that's become a part that's like accepted in the sport now. And I think just the more it increases and the more information there is out there, the more interesting it all is. So maybe it's a bit of a culture shift. Maybe it's a personality type thing. This type of people that are drawn to squash, like there's certain type of personality. If you get middle distance runners, as you get swimmers, and then there's a different culture completely in rugby.
Yeah.
Is that culture in rugby, or is that the type of athletes that get drawn to rugby? So
sure.
that all makes it quite interesting. Maybe they're just the type of athletes in squash. They're not massively. Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah.
I guess the boxing, the MMA, the
there's a certain type of character
there.
They're an all-in kind of nothing held back. You're going to see it all now. That those kind of guys, they just don't. None of them care. They'll say whatever they want in front of the camera.
There's just pressure there to sell pay-per-view tickets. Interest. So there's a different, I guess, pressure and requirement on them from you guys.
Different requirement, but I think one thing they do understand, and I had no grasp of this at all at the start, would be that you see them coming out now. You see like Paddy Pimblett, for example, like if you follow in the UFC, so Paddy's come through, and it's just like such a recognition from the start. Say what you want about the fighting, like people know who he is, even though he was still ranked 12th in one weight category. I'm not sure, like that's unbelievable, but I just mean he's not the world. He hasn't won a world champion. He's not, but he's already a huge name because of the haircut, because of the weight gain, because of the personality, because of these different things. That's brilliant. So he's really recognized from a young age that he is the brand, and if he wants to be successful in the sport, he's got to be exceptional at fighting, but he's also got to sell himself, and he's got to be a personality people want to watch as well. Whether they want to watch him lose or whether they want to watch him win, it doesn't really matter, because they're like people are interested. Yeah, exactly. So, and he's also like getting like the win he had the other day was like a seriously high level as well. So I think up until now people had thought of him as just this kind of character, whereas now he's starting to really put huge performances together where he's looking like a real contender at the top. So he's able to do it both really well, just as an example. In the sport, and they do it.
I guess a little bit for yourself in terms of that kind of straight talking, answering the question the way it's asked is part of your, is that part of your brand?
But I would say it just has to be authentic. I think he might be a caricature of what he's actually like day to day, but I think it has to be genuine. So I think if that's the way you would talk amongst your friends in your group at home, and that's the way you do actually think, I think you should be kind of authentic with it as well. Even if it's an exaggerated version of what you think, I think all these things have to be real. You can't just suddenly turn on something completely different and then be a completely different person, because that's transparent as well. So I think if it is who you are, I think there should be a bit more room to do it, but just
embrace it.
Yeah, why not? Yeah, I think it makes it a bit more interesting for everyone. But yeah, maybe athletes already are, and they have no interest in selling it. They're like, this is my career is playing squash, and I'm not interested in anything else, and that's fair enough as well, But yeah,
to go back on something you said there, and maybe round this discussion off, is spectacle. A couple of years away from LA28, the sport needs to put on its best ever spectacle.
Yeah, definitely.
Hopefully we will. But from a player's perspective, the chance to be at that spectacle, I assume, has kind of risen to the top of the ambition list for the next few years.
Yeah, it's a hard one to answer because we've never had anything before. I've never viewed anything in the sport to be that long term. Like, you're just kind of always looking a few tournaments ahead, and you're looking at best seasons. I mean, you're probably not looking as you start a season at how you're going to be playing at the British Open in June when you're starting a season. So you're never looking at it like that. And I think if we looked at the rankings 4 years ago today, it'd probably be quite different to how it's going to be 4 years coming up. So it's so difficult to predict who's going to be in what state with their bodies, with their careers, and people can even be injury free, but just not playing the same level they were. So that's a huge part of it, is that we have to, it's going to be completely different. But I'm hoping we get some good coverage from it, and I'm hoping that countries put some good funding in. I'm yet to hear anything from the UK, so we haven't started any kind of infrastructure yet. So I'm really not sure what's going to be happening. So we're 3 years out now, so I'd expect the stuff to start kind of coming into place now.
Yeah.
I'm hoping we're going to be on some kind of program, same as all the other sports are. Nothing's been indicated yet. So I don't know, because that was something I was looking forward to, because I'm not really in any kind of, I'd never have national squads, we don't have a doctor that's associated with the athletes or assigned to us or anything like that. I was hoping we were going to have a bit more of an infrastructure with the UK, where we'd have 8 guys who are training together with a coach that was going to be the GB coach now, who'd kind of work towards that. I was hoping for that, to be honest, because I thought, just like we said about seeing Johnny just opens you up to a new thing, I'll just be like, if there was a new coach assigned who was highly qualified, like let's give it a go and let's see if we can get a Team GB
because
situation.
it's Team GB, so at the minute we don't even have a Team GB in squash. It's the individual governing bodies. So
exactly. So there's nothing's been, well, I'm sure they're working on something being formed, but nothing's been told to me, for example, as one of the guys who is going to be in it or in contention. So I'm not sure what's going to happen, but I think other countries have started to do certain things, which is great. The more funding and the more input we can get, and countries that aren't necessarily squash background countries taking it more seriously, I hope that really has a knock-on effect. The big thing is whether we get included again going forward, because that's not guaranteed at all yet. If it does, I think then, I'm not sure if then the funding would be allocated in that kind of way, where it's now a sport that's in the Olympics every time, not just something that's being trialed. So yeah, we've got all these conversations to answer. But yeah, I mean, personally, that would be something that it's always stuff that people from outside the sport would understand. Like you get,
sounds it right?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, so you get Commonwealths in the UK is really big. I understand some other countries don't see the appeal of that. I think for me, Commonwealths was really big. If you go to the US, I don't think anyone has a real feel for the importance of that. I think certain countries don't. Olympics is like, everyone understands what an Olympic gold medal is. So, as well as winning a world championships, being in amongst the Olympics and then kind of medaling would just be something you could have for life. It's one of those things that's career defining, isn't it? And maybe just it transcends the sport outside of it. I think being world champion, everyone understands what that is, but say winning a major event, winning TOC is absolutely huge for anyone who understands it in squash. But like, people who don't understand that, it doesn't mean, like, it's an incredible achievement, but people wouldn't understand it outside. So an Olympic gold medal would just kind of show people, and hopefully that would be, something that it's going to be a really competitive era, because I think there's going to be so many guys who maybe would have retired. Would Paul be playing in 3.5 years? Would Mohammed be playing? Is Gawad going to try and play? So I think we're going to have that period where the older guard are kind of still involved and still trying to peak for this one event. And then you've got the Jonas and the Zacharias quickly coming up behind, who are like, maybe would have taken longer to get to that position, maybe not. But I think we might have an era where it's like incredibly strong for a bit there. We've got like generations that maybe wouldn't have met, both coming together at the same time.
Yeah, all aiming for the one gold medal.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, interesting.
To be there at the Olympic Games, competing for a gold medal in a few years' time, when you've hopefully added a few more layers, to maybe bring that back home to mum and dad. I mean, can you even think about that kind of thing? Do you just have to put it back in mind and focus on next week and 2 weeks' time?
It's nice to have those kind of things. I think your motivation has to be like, your motivation in yourself has to be intrinsic, right? You have to want to get up every day and do work. And I think then there's some healthy pushes, and then there's some things that can be unhealthy that can push you as well. So you can have like a certain amount of doing something that your parents would be really proud of, and it'd be nice to be able to, all the days they've driven me around to come in 17th place in a tournament, and they've stayed up till Sunday at 4 p.m, giving up their weekend to watch me. I mean, it must have been painful at the time, but yeah, I'm very grateful they did do that and gave me a chance, even though I wasn't doing particularly well. But it'd be that kind of stuff would be really nice. But I think there's those pulls, isn't there, where you need the thing to aim for, and you need the deterrent as well, where there's always that you need to draw on the proving people wrong, or doing that little bit. That's not what it needs to be. You shouldn't be fixated on that, but maybe that gives you a little bit of energy sometimes, and then you need a bit of a positive energy as well, where you're getting that kind of, it'd be nice to do that for your family and retire with that kind of thing in the back of your mind. But those things aren't conscious things you're thinking about all the time. It's nice to to think about that. That's a nice image in the back of your head. And when you're finished, it'd be nice to put your feet up and think that was good. But it seems like you're looking at a day to day at the moment. There's tons of hard work, and yeah, it's hard to think about that when you're in the middle of a ghosting session or in the middle of doing some hill sprints. Is like there's certain much more present things on the forefront of your mind than at that point. But yeah, it's nice to have that little extra boost. Of course, yeah, my dad's there in the front row celebrating every single time anyway. So yeah, they've enjoyed it, and they've always been a massive part of it, and they couldn't be more supportive in terms of them following it. The amount of times they've been up at 4 a.m. watching me in some 5K somewhere in the middle of nowhere, they're very grateful of that, constantly watching every single match. And so I was very young, so yeah, that'd be a nice part of it as well.
Joel, look forward to seeing the social media clips of a cold Tuesday night and
Good, that's what it's all about.
Squash court in North Wales. Thanks very much for taking your time out today, mate, and best of luck with the rest of this season and the next coming years.
Appreciate it. It was good fun. Thank you.